"Daddy, do rich people ever get lonely?" 8-year-old Lily asked the question so softly that Ryan almost missed it beneath the steady drumming of rain against the windshield. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Her blonde hair was tucked beneath a faded yellow hoodie, and her blue eyes were fixed on the storm outside. "Why would you ask that?" Ryan said. Lily shrugged. "Because if someone had everything, but nobody loved them, that would be sadder than being poor." Ryan smiled faintly, but he never got the chance to answer. A flash of lightning cut across the dark Nebraska sky, illuminating the empty highway ahead. And there, on the shoulder of the road, sat a midnight blue Mustang with its hood raised toward the rain. Beside it stood a woman. Alone. Ryan slowed his aging pickup truck. Most drivers passed without a second glance. 2 luxury SUVs rolled by in the opposite lane, spraying water across the pavement before disappearing into the storm. The woman remained where she was, one hand holding her soaked jacket closed against the wind, while the other rested on the open hood of the Mustang. "Daddy," Lily whispered. "She looks cold." Ryan already had his turn signal on. The old pickup rattled as he eased onto the shoulder. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 tiny drumsticks. He grabbed his work jacket from the passenger seat and stepped out into the weather. The woman turned as he approached. Even in the gray light, there was something remarkable about her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. It was the way she carried herself. Calm, composed, like someone accustomed to being listened to. "Car trouble?" Ryan asked. The woman laughed softly. "That obvious?" "Only because the hood is up." For the first time all day, she smiled. The tension in her shoulders loosened slightly. "I think the fuel system quit on me," she said. Ryan leaned over the engine compartment. Rainwater slid from the edge of the hood and splashed onto the pavement below. The scent of gasoline mixed with wet asphalt and distant farmland. He studied the engine for less than 30 seconds before spotting the issue. "Loose fuel line," he said. That's it. That's it." The woman blinked. "You figured that out already?" Ryan shrugged. "Been fixing cars for 20 years. He reached into his toolbox and tightened the fitting with practiced hands. The Mustang seemed almost alive beneath the storm, its polished body reflecting streaks of silver rain. A classic machine. Beautiful. Valuable. The kind of car most people only admired from a distance. 5 minutes later, Ryan stepped back. "Try it now." The woman slid into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life immediately. A deep, confident sound echoed across the empty highway. Relief washed across her face. She stepped back out and reached into her purse. "Please," she said, "let me pay you." Ryan shook his head. "No need. You stopped in a storm. Someone would have done the same for me." She stared at him for a moment. Not suspicious, not confused, just surprised, as if those words belonged to another era. Behind Ryan, Lily rolled down the truck window. "See, Daddy," she called. "Rich people can get lonely." The woman froze. Then she looked at the little girl. Something flickered in her eyes. Something deeper than amusement. For a brief second, beneath the rain and thunder and gray Nebraska sky, Regina Whitmore, the woman who secretly owned half the city, looked less like a powerful CEO and more like someone who hadn't heard kindness spoken aloud in a very long time. The storm followed them all the way back into town. Rain streaked across storefront windows and pooled beneath flickering streetlights as Ryan guided his old pickup through the quiet streets of Pine Creek. Lily sat beside him with her chin resting on the door, watching droplets race each other down the glass. She seemed sad, Lily said. Ryan kept his eyes on the road. Maybe she was having a bad day. "No," Lily replied. "I mean really sad." Ryan glanced at his daughter and smiled faintly. Children notice things adults often missed. By the time they reached home, the rain had softened into a steady drizzle. Their small house sat at the edge of town behind Ryan's garage, where the scent of motor oil seemed permanently woven into the wood. The porch light cast a warm golden circle against the darkness. It was not much, but it was theirs. Inside, Lily hurried to the kitchen while Ryan hung his wet jacket by the door. The refrigerator hummed quietly. The clock above the stove read 7:18 p.m. Another long day finished. Another paycheck still too far away. "Mac and cheese?" Lily asked hopefully. Ryan laughed. "Again? It is my favorite." "That is because you are 8. "Exactly." A few minutes later they sat together at the small kitchen table. Rain tapped gently against the windows while steam rose from their bowls. Across from him, Lily seemed perfectly content. Ryan often wondered how she managed it. Life had not been easy since losing her mother years ago. Money was always tight. The garage barely stayed afloat some months. Yet somehow Lily still found reasons to smile. "Do you think the lady got home okay?" she asked. Ryan nodded. The Mustang sounded healthy enough. "It was pretty. Very pretty." Lily grinned. "Not as pretty as your truck." Ryan nearly choked on his drink. "You are definitely my daughter." The next morning arrived wrapped in low clouds and cool autumn air. By 6:30, Ryan was already unlocking the garage. The metal door rattled upward with a familiar groan. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Tools hung neatly along the walls. The scent of rubber, oil, and old engines filled the building. It was not impressive, but Ryan took pride in keeping it clean. A man stepped out of a brand-new luxury SUV parked near the service bay. Expensive watch. Perfect haircut. Polished shoes that had never seen dirt. "You the owner?" the man asked. "That is me." The customer looked around skeptically. "Place looks smaller than I expected." Ryan simply nodded. "We still fix cars." The man chuckled. "Hope you know what you were doing." Ryan had heard comments like that for years. Some people measured value by square footage and marble floors. Others measured it by character. Ryan never bothered arguing. He just went back to work. The morning passed beneath the rhythm of impact wrenches and engine diagnostics. Customers came and went. Oil changed. Tires rotated. Batteries replaced. Around noon, Ryan was tightening bolts beneath a pickup truck when a sleek black sedan rolled slowly into the parking lot. He barely noticed until one of his mechanics whistled. "That is not local." Ryan slid out from beneath the vehicle and stood. The sedan came to a stop near the office. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out wearing a simple cream-colored coat. For a moment, Ryan did not recognize her. Then she smiled. Regina, the woman from the highway. She looked different in daylight. Confident, elegant, yet strangely uncertain as she approached. "Hi," she said. Ryan blinked. "Mustang running okay?" "Perfectly. Good." For a second, neither of them spoke. The autumn wind stirred leaves across the parking lot. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed through town. Regina held up a small paper bag. "I brought lunch." Ryan looked genuinely confused. "Lunch? You fixed my car. I told you that was free." "Then consider this a thank you." Ryan stared at the bag. Regina stared back. Neither seemed willing to retreat. Finally, he laughed. "You drove all the way back here just to bring me lunch." Regina smiled softly. "Actually, I think I came back because your daughter asked me a question I could not stop thinking about." Ryan wiped his hands on a clean shop rag and looked at Regina with growing curiosity. Around them, the garage continued its steady rhythm. Air compressors hissed. A radio played softly from a workbench. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the office. Yet for a moment, the noise seemed distant. "Lily asks a lot of questions," Ryan said. Regina smiled. "I noticed. Most people do not come back because of one of them." Regina lowered her eyes briefly. "Most people do not ask questions like that." Ryan accepted the paper bag. It felt warm. "Well, thank you." "You are welcome." For a second, neither moved. Then one of Ryan's mechanics poked his head out from beneath a truck. "Boss, are you going to stand there all afternoon?" Ryan laughed and shook his head. Regina laughed too. The sound surprised even her. It had been a long time since something simple had felt so easy. Later that afternoon, after Regina had left, Ryan sat alone in the small office behind the garage. The lunch she had brought turned out to be a homemade turkey sandwich, an apple, and a handwritten note that simply said, "Thank you for stopping." Outside, customers came and went beneath a sky finally clearing after 2 days of rain. Ryan folded the note and slipped it into a desk drawer without fully understanding why. Across town, Regina sat on the 37th floor of Whitmore Tower, staring at a wall of windows overlooking the city. Glass skyscrapers reflected golden sunlight. Traffic flowed through downtown streets below. Everything she owned stretched before her. Hotels, office buildings, shopping centers, entire blocks of real estate. Yet somehow her thoughts remained fixed on a small garage at the edge of Pine Creek. "You are smiling." Regina turned. Her assistant, Claire, stood in the doorway holding a tablet. "Am I?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "You have rejected 3 board proposals today and smiled twice. Something unusual is happening." Regina looked back toward the skyline. "I met someone." Claire nearly dropped the tablet. "Someone?" Regina laughed softly. Not like that. But even as she said it, she was not entirely certain. 3 days passed. Autumn settled deeper over Nebraska. Trees along Main Street glowed orange and gold. Cool air carried the scent of fallen leaves and would smoke. On Friday evening, Ryan locked up the garage and picked up Lily from school. The moment she climbed into the truck, she launched into excited conversation. Guess what happened? You won a Nobel Prize? Ryan asked. Better. That seems unlikely. I got an A on my science project. Ryan smiled. Now that I believe. Lily grinned proudly. Can we celebrate? What kind of celebration? Diner food. Ryan pretended to think about it. That is a dangerous request. Please. Okay. 10 minutes later, they walked into Molly's Diner, a small local restaurant where nearly everyone knew everyone else. The smell of fresh coffee, burgers, and baked pie filled the air. Country music drifted softly from overhead speakers. Lily slid into a booth by the window. Ryan sat across from her. Menus opened. Orders were discussed. Life felt wonderfully ordinary. Then Lily suddenly froze. Her eyes widened. Daddy. Ryan looked up. What? Lily pointed toward the entrance. Look. The bell above the diner door chimed gently. Regina stepped inside. She wore jeans, a light sweater, and no sign of the corporate power she carried every day. For a moment, she seemed just as surprised as Ryan. What are the odds? Ryan said. Regina laughed. Apparently not very good. Before either adult could say another word, Lily waved both arms dramatically. You have to sit with us. Regina blinked. I do. Absolutely. Lily, Ryan said gently. What? She is alone. We are not. Regina looked at the empty tables around the diner. Then she looked back at Lily's hopeful face. Something warm settled inside her chest. Well, she said softly. It would be rude to argue with such convincing logic. As she slid into the booth beside Lily, neither Ryan nor Regina realized that this simple dinner would become the beginning of something neither of them had been looking for, but both of them quietly needed. The waitress had barely poured the coffee before Lily decided Regina was officially part of the evening. Do you like pancakes? Lily asked. Sometimes, Regina replied. What about apple pie? Also sometimes. Lily narrowed her eyes dramatically. Those are suspicious answers. Ryan laughed into his coffee while Regina tried unsuccessfully not to. The diner glowed with warm yellow light against the cool autumn evening outside. Families chatted quietly. Silverware clinked against plates. Somewhere near the counter, an old jukebox played a country ballad that sounded like it had lived in Nebraska forever. For the first time in a long time, Regina felt comfortable sitting somewhere nobody expected anything from her. No board meetings. No investors. No cameras. Just dinner. What do you do? Lily suddenly asked. Ryan nearly dropped his fork. Lily. What? People do not always want to talk about work. Regina smiled. It is okay. Lily waited patiently. Regina considered her answer. For years, she had introduced herself with titles, companies, responsibilities, and accomplishments. Yet none of those felt right tonight. I help run a business, she finally said. Big business. Lily asked. Some people would say that. Do you like it? The question lingered. Regina looked down at her coffee. Sometimes. Ryan noticed the pause. He noticed a lot more than most people realized. What do you like? He asked. Regina looked up. For a second, she seemed genuinely surprised by the question. Not what she did. Not what she owned. What she liked. I used to love driving, she admitted. Just driving? Just driving. A soft smile touched her face. Windows down. No schedule. No destination. Lily nodded wisely. That sounds better than meetings. Ryan laughed. You have never attended a meeting. Exactly. By the end of dinner, the conversation flowed as naturally as if they had known each other for years. Yet when the bill arrived, reality quietly returned. Regina reached for it. Ryan reached for it. Their hands stopped at the same time. I invited myself, Regina said. I am paying. Ryan shook his head. Not happening. You fixed my car. Still not happening. You are impossible. I hear that a lot. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then Lily raised her hand. I vote for Daddy. The waitress laughed. Regina surrendered. I have been outnumbered. Outside, the night air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant chimney smoke. Streetlights reflected off parked cars along Main Street. Regina stood beside her vehicle while Ryan and Lily prepared to leave. Thank you for dinner, Regina said. Thank Lily, Ryan replied. She is the social planner. Lily grinned proudly. You can come again. Regina smiled at her. Maybe I will. The following week, something unusual began happening. Regina kept finding reasons to return to Pine Creek. Sometimes she stopped by the garage with coffee. Sometimes she visited local shops she would never normally notice. Sometimes she simply parked downtown and walked beneath the golden autumn trees. At first she told herself she was taking a break from work. Then she told herself she liked the town. Eventually she stopped making excuses altogether. One afternoon she arrived at the garage just as Ryan was helping an elderly widow load groceries into her trunk. No charge, the woman asked. No charge, Ryan replied. You fixed my battery. Took 5 minutes. You cannot keep doing things for free. Ryan smiled. Watch me. Regina observed quietly from a distance. 2 days later she saw him repair a teenager's flat tire after school. The next day, he spent his lunch break helping a retired veteran whose truck would not start. Nobody knew she was watching. Nobody knew one of the wealthiest women in the state sat inside a parked car across the street taking mental notes. Each time Ryan helped someone, he asked for nothing. No publicity, no praise, no reward. The autumn sun dipped low across the horizon one evening as Regina sat alone in her sedan overlooking the garage. Golden lights spilled across the old building. Ryan stood outside laughing with Lily while they swept leaves from the sidewalk together. Their shadows stretched long across the pavement. Regina stared at them longer than she intended. Then she noticed something else. The garage sign needed repairs. The paint was fading. One corner of the roof sagged slightly. The office windows looked older than they should. Small details most people would never see. Yet suddenly she saw all of them. And for the first time, a question formed in her mind. If Ryan spent so much time helping everyone else, who was helping Ryan? The question stayed with Regina long after she drove away from the garage that evening. If Ryan spent so much time helping everyone else, who was helping Ryan? The next few days brought no easy answer. Instead, they revealed pieces of a story Ryan never talked about. Monday morning arrived beneath a blanket of gray clouds. A cold wind swept through Pine Creek, carrying dry leaves across sidewalks and parking lots. Regina parked half a block from the garage and watched from inside her car while pretending to answer emails. Through the office window, she could see Ryan sitting at his desk surrounded by invoices, receipts, and paperwork. There was no smile now, no easy laugh, just a tired man studying numbers that clearly were not cooperating. A few minutes later, he rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Then he opened a letter. Regina noticed the change immediately. His shoulders stiffened. The warmth disappeared from his face. He read the page once, then again. Finally, he folded it carefully and placed it inside a drawer. Not crumpled, not thrown away, just quietly hidden. Something about that bothered her. Later that afternoon, she walked into the garage carrying coffee for everyone. Perfect timing, one mechanic said. You may have just saved morale. Ryan smiled politely, but seemed distracted. Everything okay? Regina asked. Sure. The answer came too quickly. You are a terrible liar. Ryan laughed softly. Good thing I fixed cars instead. The conversation moved on, but Regina did not forget the look she had seen earlier. That evening she sat alone in her penthouse office overlooking the city. Thousands of lights glittered below. The skyline stretched for miles beneath a darkening sky. Yet instead of reviewing quarterly reports, she found herself thinking about a faded envelope tucked inside a desk drawer. The next morning, answers arrived unexpectedly. Regina stopped at Molly's diner for breakfast before a meeting. The restaurant buzzed with regular customers and the comforting smell of bacon and fresh coffee. She had barely taken a seat when Molly herself slid into the booth across from her. You have been spending a lot of time around Ryan lately. Regina nearly choked on her coffee. Small town. Molly smiled knowingly. Very small town. Regina laughed. He is a good man. Molly's expression softened. The best. How long have you known him? Almost 15 years. Regina stirred her coffee slowly. Has the garage always struggled? Molly sighed. More than people realize. Regina looked up. What do you mean? Molly hesitated before answering. Ryan keeps everyone else's problems ahead of his own. Last winter, he delayed repairs on the building because one of his employees needed help with medical bills. Before that, he spent months helping a family after a house fire. And the garage? The garage paid the price. Regina felt a quiet ache in her chest. Does he ever ask for help? Molly laughed sadly. Not once. That night, long after closing, Ryan sat alone inside the garage. The building was silent except for the occasional creak of old wood settling in the cold. A single lamp illuminated his desk. Outside, autumn wind rattled the sign above the entrance. He opened the drawer and removed the same letter. Final notice. Payment required within 30 days. He stared at the page while the clock ticked steadily on the wall. The bank had been patient. More patient than most. But patience eventually ran out. If he could not catch up, the property would be taken. The garage. The house behind it. Everything. Ryan folded the notice and slipped it back into the drawer just as headlights swept across the front windows. He frowned. Nobody should have been there this late. Curious, he stepped outside. Across the parking lot sat a familiar sedan. Regina remained inside for several seconds before finally stepping out. The wind caught her hair as she closed the door. She looked toward the garage. Ryan looked toward her. Neither spoke immediately. Then Regina noticed something she had never seen before. The lights inside the office were on, but the rest of the building sat in darkness. And standing alone beneath the cold Nebraska sky, Ryan suddenly looked less like the strong man who helped everyone else, and more like someone carrying a weight he had been hiding for far too long. Ryan slipped his hands into the pockets of his work jacket and walked across the parking lot. Cold air moved through the trees lining the edge of the property. Dry leaves skittered across the pavement like tiny shadows chasing the wind. Regina stood beside her sedan, studying him with quiet concern. "It is almost 9 o'clock, Ryan said. "Most people are home by now." "Most people are," Regina replied. "You are not." A faint smile touched Ryan's face. "Neither are you." For a moment neither spoke. The old garage stood behind them beneath a pale autumn moon. The faded sign creaked gently overhead. Light spilled from the office window onto the empty lot. Regina looked toward it. "Could not sleep?" she asked. Ryan followed her gaze. "Something like that." She nodded. "Me too." It was not entirely true, but it was close enough. Ryan opened the garage door and gestured inside. "You want coffee?" Regina smiled. "At 9 o'clock? Bad idea?" "Probably." "Good." 10 minutes later they sat across from each other inside the small office. The room smelled faintly of coffee, paper, and engine oil. Framed photographs lined the shelves. Lily at age for holding a fishing pole. Lily on her first bicycle. Lily missing her 2 front teeth and smiling like she had just conquered the world. Regina found herself staring at the pictures. "She seems happy," she said. Ryan looked toward the photographs. "She is. That is because of you." Ryan shook his head. "Children are stronger than we think." Regina remained quiet for a moment. Then her eyes drifted toward the corner of the desk where a folded envelope rested partially hidden beneath a stack of invoices. Ryan noticed immediately and slid a folder over it. Too late. She had already seen enough. "You do not have to tell me," Regina said softly. "Tell you what. Whatever is keeping you here alone tonight." Ryan leaned back in his chair. The fluorescent light overhead hummed quietly. Outside, the wind continued its lonely conversation with the old building. "Sometimes businesses have difficult months," he finally said. Regina held his gaze. "And sometimes they have difficult years." Ryan laughed softly. "You really do not let things go." "No, good to know." The conversation shifted after that. Easier topics. Childhood stories. Favorite road trips. Lily's endless ability to ask impossible questions. By the time Regina finally stood to leave, the tension in the room had softened. Yet as she walked toward the door, she paused. "Ryan." "Yeah." "If you ever need help." Ryan smiled before she could finish. "Thank you." "That is not an answer. It is the answer you are getting." Regina shook her head. "You are impossible too." "I hear that a lot." The next morning arrived bright and clear. Golden sunlight stretched across Pine Creek. Frost sparkled on rooftops before slowly melting beneath the warming sky. Ryan was replacing brake pads when a sleek black SUV rolled into the garage. The vehicle alone looked expensive enough to buy half the buildings on Main Street. A sharply dressed man stepped out holding a leather portfolio. "Ryan Carter?" "That is me. I represent Whitmore Automotive Collection." Ryan frowned slightly. The name sounded familiar. "Okay. We have several classic vehicles requiring restoration and maintenance." The man opened the portfolio and handed him a folder. "Your name was recommended." Ryan flipped through photographs. Vintage Mustangs. Shelby models. Rare collector cars worth fortunes. His mechanic beside him nearly dropped a wrench. These are incredible. Ryan nodded slowly. Why bring them here? The representative smiled. Because someone believes you are the best person for the job. Before Ryan could ask another question, the man handed him an address. Downtown Omaha. A private automotive collection housed inside one of the most exclusive corporate properties in the state. We would like you there tomorrow morning. The following day, Ryan drove nearly 2 hours through rolling Nebraska countryside. The address led him into the heart of the city. Glass towers reflected sunlight across polished streets. Luxury cars lined valet entrances. Everything felt larger, richer, faster. Ryan finally arrived at a massive building of steel and glass that stretched toward the clouds. He stepped from his truck and looked up. The company logo above the entrance gleamed in silver letters. Whitmore Holdings. Ryan froze. The name hit him instantly. Whitmore. A receptionist escorted him through a marble lobby unlike anything he had ever seen. Employees moved briskly through hallways. Digital screens displayed company news and financial updates. Then he entered the central atrium. A giant presentation screen dominated the far wall. The image changed. Applause filled the room from a recorded corporate event. And suddenly Ryan saw her. Regina stood on the screen addressing thousands of employees. Confident, powerful, elegant. Beneath her image appeared 4 words that made his breath catch. Regina Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer. Ryan stood completely still as the realization settled over him. The woman who drank coffee in his garage. The woman who sat beside Lily in a small-town diner. The woman who wandered Pine Creek like an ordinary traveler. She was not simply successful. She was one of the most powerful people in the entire state. And at that exact moment, everything he thought he knew about Regina changed. For several long seconds, Ryan simply stood there staring at the massive screen. Around him, employees continued walking through the atrium. Conversations blended into a distant hum. Polished marble reflected sunlight from towering glass walls. Yet all he could see was Regina. Not the woman who sat in a diner booth laughing with Lily. Not the woman who brought lunch to his garage. This Regina stood before thousands of people with effortless authority. The kind of authority that changed cities. The kind that moved markets. The kind that existed in a world completely different from his own. Mr. Carter? The representative asked. Ryan blinked. Sorry. This way. Ryan followed him through the building, but his thoughts remained behind. Every conversation he had shared with Regina replayed differently now. Every unanswered question suddenly made sense. The private sedan. The vague descriptions of work. The way people occasionally recognized her downtown and then quickly looked away. By the time he arrived at the private automotive collection, something inside him felt unsettled. The warehouse itself was breathtaking. Dozens of classic vehicles sat beneath soft lighting. Rare Mustangs worth hundreds of thousands of dollars gleamed like museum pieces. Yet Ryan barely noticed. His mind remained fixed on a single realization. She had known exactly who she was the entire time. He had not. Late that afternoon, Ryan returned to Pine Creek. The drive felt longer than usual. Endless fields stretched beneath a pale Nebraska sky. Wind turbines turned slowly in the distance. Autumn sunlight painted everything gold. Normally he loved this drive. Today he barely saw it. When he arrived at the garage, Lily was already waiting on the porch behind the shop. Daddy, she shouted. Ryan smiled automatically. Hey, kiddo. She ran into his arms. How was the city? Big. Did you see fancy cars? A lot of them. Lily grinned. Did you see Regina? Ryan hesitated. The pause lasted less than a second, but Lily noticed. She noticed everything. Daddy, not today. It was technically true. Regina had not been there. Yet the answer still felt wrong. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, Ryan sat alone on the porch. The old wooden boards creaked beneath his chair. Crickets chirped in the cooling air. A porch light glowed softly beside the door. His phone rested on the table next to him. Regina's name appeared on the screen. Once, then again, then a text message. Are you okay? Ryan stared at it for several seconds before locking the phone without replying. Across the state, Regina stood alone inside her office overlooking the city skyline. The lights below sparkled against the darkening sky. She had spent the entire day in meetings, yet remembered none of them. Ryan had not answered her calls. He had not returned her messages. Something had changed. And deep down, she already knew why. You should call him again. Claire said from the doorway. Regina shook her head. No, you never give up this easily. Regina looked toward the city. This is different. Claire studied her carefully. Because you care? Regina said nothing. Sometimes silence told the truth faster than words. 2 days passed. Then 3. Regina stayed away from Pine Creek. Ryan stayed busy at the garage. On the surface, life continued normally. Oil changes, repairs, school pickups, dinner at home. Yet something important was missing. One chilly Thursday afternoon, Lily finally decided she had endured enough mystery. Did you have a fight? She asked while helping Ryan organize tools. Ryan nearly dropped the socket wrench. What? You and Regina? No, then why does nobody call anybody anymore? Ryan sighed. It is complicated. Lily considered that answer carefully. Adults say that when they do not want to explain things. Ryan laughed despite himself. Maybe. Did she lie? The question landed harder than expected. Ryan looked away. Through the open garage door, he could see leaves blowing across the empty parking lot. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement. No, he finally said. Not exactly. Then why are you sad? Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, then looked down at his daughter. Because the truth was not anger. It was not betrayal. It was something much more difficult. Somewhere along the way, Regina had stopped being a stranger. And now he was discovering that the distance between their worlds might be far greater than either of them had ever admitted. The following Monday began like any other. Frost coated the grass behind the garage. A pale autumn sun slowly climbed above the horizon. Ryan unlocked the service bay doors while Lily waited for the school bus with a backpack nearly as large as she was. Life felt ordinary, predictable, safe. Then the letter arrived. It sat among invoices and advertisements on Ryan's desk. Plain white envelope. Official seal. No surprises. He already knew what it would say before opening it. 30 days had become 7. The bank intended to proceed. Ryan read the notice once, folded it carefully, and placed it inside the same drawer where all the other warnings waited. He did not complain. He did not panic. He simply went back to work. That was what he always did. Across town, however, rumors had begun spreading. Pine Creek was small enough that news traveled faster than weather. By lunch, people were already whispering. By evening, everyone seemed to know. The old garage might not survive the year. Regina heard the rumor during a meeting. One sentence from a local business report was enough. She immediately stopped listening to the presentation. Reschedule the rest of my afternoon, she told Claire. Everything. 45 minutes later, she was driving toward Pine Creek beneath a sky streaked with silver clouds. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel the entire way. She was angry. Not at Ryan. At herself. She should have asked more questions. She should have paid closer attention. She should have realized sooner how serious things had become. Meanwhile, Ryan remained unaware of what was coming. The afternoon passed beneath the familiar rhythm of the garage. Customers arrived. Repairs were completed. Life moved forward. Then shortly before closing, a black luxury SUV rolled into the parking lot. Another followed. Then another. Mechanics looked up from their work. Customers paused conversations. Even Ryan frowned. The vehicles parked neatly along the curb. Men and women in expensive suits stepped out carrying folders and tablets. One of them approached Ryan directly. Mr. Carter? Yes. We would like to discuss acquisition opportunities. Ryan already disliked where this conversation was heading. Acquisition of what? This property. Ryan's expression hardened slightly. Not interested. The representative smiled professionally. You have not heard the offer. I do not need to. Another representative stepped forward. The location is valuable. The development potential is significant. It is a garage. For now, Ryan folded his arms. Conversation is over. The group exchanged glances. Their polished confidence began slipping. Mr. Carter, one man said. With respect, sentiment does not stop economics. The parking lot grew quieter. Mechanics stopped working entirely. Several customers watched openly now. Ryan remained calm. Maybe not. Then you understand the situation. I understand that I built this place. The man sighed impatiently. Sometimes people need to know when it is time to move on. The words hung in the air. Not cruel. Not loud. Yet somehow they felt heavier than intended. Then a voice interrupted from behind them. Or perhaps sometimes people need to understand what they are actually looking at. Every head turned. A black sedan had just entered the lot. Regina stepped out. The autumn wind caught her coat as she crossed the pavement with quiet confidence. Nobody spoke. The representatives immediately recognized her. Their expressions changed so quickly it was almost startling. "Ms. Whitmore," one of them said. Regina did not even look at him. Her attention remained fixed on Ryan. Then she turned toward the group. "You see an aging garage," she said calmly. "I see a business that has served this community for nearly 2 decades." Silence settled across the lot. Regina continued. "You see square footage. I see a father who spent years helping people when helping them was not profitable." Nobody interrupted. Nobody moved. "You see a property." Her voice softened slightly. "I see one of the finest men I have ever met." The wind seemed to stop. Customers stared. Mechanics stared. Even Ryan stood motionless. Across the parking lot, sunlight reflected off garage windows and drifting leaves. For the first time, the distance between their worlds no longer mattered. Because standing in front of everyone, Regina was not speaking as a billionaire executive. She was speaking as someone who knew exactly what kind of person Ryan truly was. And as the silence spread across the entire parking lot, something profound changed in the hearts of everyone listening. The silence lingered long after the representatives left. Nobody seemed eager to be the first person to speak. The mechanics stood beside open toolboxes. Customers remained near their vehicles. Dry leaves drifted across the parking lot beneath a sky painted gold by the late afternoon sun. Ryan looked at Regina. Regina looked back at him. Neither needed many words. Some moments were too important for speeches. The following week brought changes no one in Pine Creek expected. Not dramatic changes. Not overnight miracles. Just steady, quiet progress. The kind built on dignity rather than spectacle. Regina never offered Ryan a handout. She knew him too well for that. Instead, she helped in a way he could accept. Through Whitmore Automotive Collection, she awarded the garage a long-term restoration contract servicing several classic vehicle programs. The work was legitimate. The pay was fair. Most importantly, Ryan earned every dollar himself. "You planned this," Ryan said one afternoon while reviewing the paperwork. Regina smiled over her coffee. "I prefer the word invested. You are impossible." "I hear that a lot." The old phrase made both of them laugh. Within months, the garage felt different. The roof was repaired. The sign was restored. New equipment arrived. Not luxury, not excess, just the tools needed to do the work properly. The bank notices disappeared. The drawer that once held warning letters now held customer thank you cards and drawings from Lily. One Saturday morning, Ryan unlocked the garage to discover a crowd gathered outside. Families from town, former customers, retired veterans, teachers, farmers, people he had helped over the years without expecting anything in return. Someone had organized a community appreciation breakfast. Ryan immediately suspected Molly. Molly immediately denied everything while serving pancakes. Nobody believed her. "You fixed my truck 3 winters ago," one farmer said. "Would not take a dime." "You helped my son after his accident left him stranded," another woman added. "You stayed 2 hours after closing." "You replaced my battery on Christmas Eve," an elderly widow said. Ryan stood there surrounded by people whose names he remembered but whose gratitude he never expected. Across the crowd, Regina watched quietly. For years she had attended galas, award ceremonies, and corporate celebrations. None of them felt as meaningful as this simple gathering in a small Nebraska town. Because respect earned through kindness carried a different weight than respect earned through power. As autumn slowly gave way to winter, another tradition emerged. Friday dinners. Sometimes at Molly's diner. Sometimes at Ryan's house. Sometimes nowhere special at all. Lily insisted on planning most of them. "I am management," she explained. Neither adult argued. One snowy December evening, Ryan finished closing the garage and found Regina waiting outside beside a familiar vehicle. The midnight blue Mustang gleamed beneath strands of holiday lights reflected from nearby storefronts. Snowflakes drifted gently through the cold air. Regina held out a set of keys. "What is this?" Ryan asked. "A thank you." He shook his head immediately. "No," Regina laughed. "You have not even listened yet." "Still no. The car belongs to the collection. I am not giving it away." Ryan relaxed slightly. "Okay. I am asking you to drive it." "Drive it?" "One evening. One road trip. No destination." Ryan stared at her. Slowly, a smile appeared. "You remembered." "I remember everything." Moments later, they stood together beside the Mustang, while Lily bounced excitedly between them, wearing a bright red winter coat. "Can we go now?" she asked. "It is freezing." Ryan opened the passenger door for Lily. Regina settled into the other seat. The engine started with a deep, familiar rumble. Warm light spilled across the snowy street. Ryan rested his hands on the steering wheel and looked ahead. Then he glanced toward Lily, then toward Regina. For the first time in years, the future did not feel uncertain. It felt open, hopeful, full of second chances. The Mustang rolled forward beneath the glow of Christmas lights and drifting snow. Behind them, the garage stood strong. Ahead of them, the road disappeared into the quiet Nebraska night. And sometimes that is how grace arrives. Not through grand miracles, not through wealth, not through power, but through ordinary people who choose kindness when nobody is watching. Long after the taillights disappeared beyond the edge of town, Pine Creek remained still beneath the falling snow. And in that beautiful silence, everyone who knew their story understood the same truth. The most valuable thing Ryan ever built was never the garage. It was the life, the respect, and the family that grew around a simple act of kindness beside a broken car.